Hello, my name's Jade and today I'm going to be talking about the books I read in February. That was a very big hello. I read 5 books in February. 2 of them were chunky fantasy tomes. Undoubtedly the theme this month was fantasy sequels slash horror. First book I finished in February last month was Bookshops Bonedust by Travis Baldry. This is a prequel technically to Legends and Lattes, but like a prequel is kind of a sequel. I listened to this via audiobook and it's narrated by Travis Baldry as well, and he does a fantastic job narrating these books. So in Bookshops Bonedust we follow Viv, who is an orc, the same lead character that we have in Legends and Lattes. If you haven't already read it, I really recommend it. There are cozy fantasy books about an orc, Viv, who gives up adventuring in Legends and Lattes to open up a coffee shop, and this one takes place much before that. She's in a battle of a kind. They're trying to find this evil creature, person, woman, and she gets injured and so she's forced to rest up in this little seaside town, and it's just felt like her hijinks while there. This kind of like creature that they're looking for, that plot interweaves a little bit, but mostly she has this friendship with a ratkin named Fern. Fern has this old secondhand bookshop and Viv decides to help her do it up a bit, make it a little cleaner, a little brighter, try and give it some new life, some new customers. These books are so cute and sweet. The writing style is very easy to read. It's pretty well written, I would argue. And it does have this very like tranquil quality to it that I really enjoy, especially with Travis's narration. Viv's a really fun character. I love her sense of humour. I love her friendships with people. She's pretty easygoing and so she's pretty easy to get on with. Then that means like the people that she doesn't get on with is all the more funny. I absolutely adored Fern in this one as well. She was so much fun. I will say, like, on the front it says high fantasy, first love, second-hand books. The whole first loves part of this book, I could have left it. I was shipping her with Fern, not with who she actually ended up kind of having as something of a romance with. And so it just kind of like threw me. I wasn't shipping them at all. I didn't see the chemistry there either, like especially initially I was imagining the person she did end up in a kind of relationship with much older than Viv, and I don't know why. So it just really, I wasn't expecting it and it was really hard for me to like wrap my around every time it came up. And we weren't like super invested in their relationship. I mean, she's only there for like a short amount of time. We all know that she's going to leave inevitably, and so this relationship isn't really a relationship because they know it's going to end and they're just kind of spending time together. I didn't care. But other than that, I found the rest of it quite interesting. I will say, like, in terms of the fantasy plotline, I'm being vague, not because I'm trying not to spoil you, but because I literally cannot remember. I think I was more invested in like the risk and the baddie and the bad magic and the kind of that situation, the shady stuff in this one more so than in Legends and Lattes. I remember like it just didn't seem like very much of a threat, like it didn't really matter in Legends and Lattes, whereas here like I kind of felt like, oh, this matters. I don't know if it was as cute as sweet as Legends and Lattes, because while repairing the bookshop was fun, I don't know if it was as much fun as like building the coffee shop from scratch, but both are really sweet. Like, I don't think I prefer one over the other. I think I feel pretty similarly towards the both of them. If you read Legends and Lattes and enjoyed it, I would definitely recommend picking this one up. I really want to see a third book following Viv. I could just read about Viv forever. I don't think I'd ever get bored. And yeah, I think that's everything I have to say. I'm going to give Bookshops Bonedust an 8 out of 10. And then next up we have one of the big fantasy tomes I was referencing earlier, and that is House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas. This is the 3rd book in the Crescent City trilogy. I did not know this was going to be a trilogy. I knew she was under a 3-book deal contract. I did a full reading vlog for this book. It will be the next video that's up on my channel. Midway through editing it currently. It's long, it's in depth. I'm gonna try not to talk too much about it here. On the whole, I liked it. I enjoyed myself. I definitely liked it better than House of Sky and Breath. Didn't like it as much. as House of Earth and Blood. I think House of Earth and Blood is probably one of the most complicated and complex books that Sarah has ever written. The relationships, personal like problems and dilemmas were so nuanced and complicated and contradictory, and I found it so fascinating, and I don't think either of the two sequels have met that. I think they've kind of been watered down. I do think as well that because it's a trilogy, it does kind of feel a bit rushed. I like the overall arc. I like where we leave off in Sky and Breath and that kind of shooting up to gearing towards the end. I think the kind of overarching structure of this one for the most part really worked well. Towards the end, things just sped up way too quickly for my personal liking. I just had envisioned a completely different arc for this series as a whole, for this story as a whole. I really feel like I was cheated a little bit. I feel like it could have been so much more epic than it was. I feel like the bad guys in this series are some of the worst bad guys that Sarah has ever written about, and they were like defeated in the most anticlimactic way of all of the bad guys. So it really just didn't like match up to me. But there were so many great moments in this book, like plot-wise, just like scenes that were so cool. I for the most part loved our characters. I just, like I said, I don't think the way they interacted, I think sometimes things were dismissed way too quickly. So I'm really kind of like this. On the whole, I enjoyed it. On the whole, I think it's a decent end to the trilogy. I by no means hated it. I had a fun time reading it, and I have some respect for it, but I was a little bit underwhelmed. I'm gonna give it an 8.5 because I do think this book does a lot right. It just also, there's a lot of things about it that bothered me, but I'm also aware that a big part of that isn't like inherently this book's fault, it's the way that the series as a whole is structured. And then next up, definitely, if you were to look at the 5 books I picked this month and see point of which one doesn't belong, it's this one. And that is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. This is non-fiction, and it's about mindfulness. It's about being present in the moment and the power of now. It's really hard to review a book like this because like pretty much all of what he said is like true. You can't really argue with him a lot of the time. Like not a lot of what he says is technically subjective. A lot of what he says is just fact, and I think I kind of subconsciously knew a lot of what he said. I just had never like had someone directly tell me or like directly thought it before, and it's very ironic because I do think this book is quite thought-provoking, but the whole point of it is learning how to shut down your thoughts. I definitely have noticed myself implementing some of the practices he mentioned in it. Not necessarily talking about this stuff trying to make you happy, although he does like use that kind of language a lot, like bliss and euphoria. It's more so about being at peace as opposed to like seeking enlightenment. It's more about shutting down the negativity, I suppose. But he does also imply that like through this stuff you will find, you know, euphoria, blah 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 blah. There's a lot of food for thought. There's a lot of things that I think now will stick with me. I think there's a lot of things that I was kind of almost there and had kind of started to think about myself, and then he'd said it and I was like, yeah, well that's just like definitely sold me on it. So I do recommend it. Because the whole book is just about that one thing, it kind of is a little bit repetitive, but he never, every time he repeats himself it's for a purpose. It is a relatively short book, like I don't think it's too waffly. It's something you're interested in, I would recommend picking it up. It's not necessarily like the most entertaining read because of obvious reasons. And so if it was anything, like I did kind of struggle with it a little bit, like I did have to like speed it up a bit, which I know is like directly contrasting the point he's trying to make, but I wanted to move on. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say about it. How would I even rate it? I feel like I give it 4 stars. Like I said, I can't really critique it in any way. Like I don't think anything he says is technically wrong, and it's well written. I really like the way it was structured. It's just not the most enjoyable, bestest thing I've ever read either. So I'd probably give it like 4 stars and 8 out of 10. It's hailing. If you can hear that, I am so sorry. The weather has been, it was sunny if you believe it or not, and now it's so dark. The weather's just been flip-flopping like between torrential rain and hail and like sunshine, like blinding sunshine. I cannot believe as soon as I turn my camera on, this is what happens. The 4th book I read in February, I don't know why I'm keeping count, was What Feasts at Night by T. Kingfisher. I have ordered it, but it's not arrived in time for this video. This one via audiobook as well. Let me just find the narrator for you. I listened to it on Everand, if any of you have Everand. I think quite a lot of T. Kingfisher's books are on Everand as Audible as audible as audiobooks. Wi-Fi isn't working, I would bet because of the storm. It's narrated by Cloud Quinn, who is not the same person that narrated the first one. It took me a minute to like adjust. I do think they did a pretty great job. I love the way they like emphasized certain words and like the tone they did at times. I do think their rendition of Mrs. Potter was relatively different to the way the first person narrated it, and so it like always kind of threw me when she spoke. Other than that though, I think both are decent audiobooks. I recommend both of them. This is the sequel to What Moves the Dead. What Moves the Dead is a Fall of the House of Usher retelling. It's a horror. It's not necessarily like, I can't really talk about like the fantasy versus supernatural versus, I don't want to get into that stuff because spoilers. It does deal with like mushroom fungi horror, which I don't like, but because I don't like it so much, I think it's a really effective horror for me, so I'm like a little bit tempted to look more into it, honestly. And then this one is the sequel. It's a very different direction than The Fall of the House of Usher. I don't think is a retelling of anything. I wouldn't be surprised if it does take inspiration from some kind of folktale mythology situation. It takes place in Galatia, which is a country that's mentioned a lot in What Moves the Dead, but I don't think we're in Galatia. I remember being really confused about this whole Galatia situation. I will link the video where I discuss What Moves the Dead down below, and the video where I discuss Legends and Lattes and the first two books in the Crescent City series. If you're interested, they will all be linked down below. I remember thinking like it was a random plot element and I don't know why it was there, but like this one takes place in Galatia, so the whole Galatia element is really important. Galatia is this like made up place. I imagine it's somewhere in Europe, but there's some like Galatian superstitions and folk tales. They're both novellas. It's hard to like talk about like what the threat, what the horror element is without giving too much away, but that superstition stuff is key. Weird things occur. I feel like could be the theme of both of these books. I think the plot was probably stronger in The Fall of the House of Usher retelling because it had that backbone to go on. I think that helped the pacing and just the general premise, and the weird like mushroom situation was kind of interesting, and it had this like mystery element to it. And this one has a mystery element to it as well, but it's just much weaker. It's not drawn out as much as it was in the first one. Yeah, I just think the way the plot was structured and paced in this one, I wasn't as invested. Like there was littler evidence, people dismissed things much quicker. Yeah, I didn't love the inherent like what was actually going on. But the characters are so much fun. Like I would read a third book easily, because our lead character especially, I want to say their name is Easton. Why have I forgotten it already? They are so much fun. They have such a great sense of humor. I laughed so many times. I love the writing style. It's really like playful and jovial, but it also has this old-fashioned sense to it. So because of that, I did enjoy it on the whole, but I don't think I loved it. And I think that's probably true for What Moves the Dead as well. But like that being said, I would read another T. Kingfisher book in a heartbeat. Those are the only two books I've read by that author. I think I would probably give it somewhere around like a 6 out of 10. I feel like I gave What Moves the Dead 7 out of 10, and I do think it's like a mark lower than that one, so I'm gonna give it a 6. And then the last book I finished this month is another fantasy tome. It's another sequel as per the theme of this month, and that is Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. Now I finished this last night. I like stayed up late to finish it, so it's all fresh. I'm ready to go. I had heard nothing but negative reviews about Iron Flame. I don't think I'd heard a single good review, but you know what? I enjoyed Iron Flame a lot. Is it as much fun as Fourth Wing is? No, they are tonally very different, but then again, it's a sequel. Sequels tend to be tonally very different. You don't inherently get as much fun and hijinks in the rest of a fantasy series as you do in that first book. I do think the pacing, it felt slower to me. It's hard to kind of put my finger on what it is exactly, because there are a lot of really exciting, fast-paced moments in here, and there's a lot of really distinct moments. Like structurally it feels very different to Fourth Wing in terms of like the relationship. It's similar to Fourth Wing, but I didn't mind because I love tension. I love people stewing in their emotions. When they become like complicit and it's all like happy days, happy couples, I get really bored really quickly. So I ate up the tension. Was it repetitive? Yes. Was it unfounded? I don't think so. I understood where our main character was coming from. Did she repeat herself through the process quite a lot? Could their communication skills be worked on? Yes, but they also talk about how their communication skills could be worked on. They are self-aware. Like we did get to a point and I was like, oh, okay, now this feels a lot like Fourth Wing. Like it's more or less like It's not as fun. I don't think because of that it's as funny either. It's got a slightly slower tone. So I do think on the whole I enjoyed Fourth Wing more. Don't get me wrong, but I still had a lot of fun reading Iron Flame. I still think it's a pretty solid sequel, to be honest. I think a lot of really exciting stuff went down. We did broaden the world out a bit, because there was definitely, I heard a couple of people talking about Fourth Wing, like the world didn't feel very expansive or complicated or nuanced, and I agree. And I do think that is a bit better in this one, but I do think this world and this fantasy system inherently isn't that complicated or nuanced. I'm okay with that. I still enjoy the world as a whole. Who knows? I have a feeling it's gonna get more complicated as it goes on, as it often does with fantasy. It's just that we started off on a different level, and it's like, I don't think we should hold all fantasy worlds to the same degree. Perrin is still my favourite character. He's still the funniest character. Just so much of the stuff he says, I love him so much. I love the journey Andarna goes through. So excited with everything that happened in the end and what this means for the series going on. I did not expect half of the stuff that happened in this book to happen in this book, because where do we go from here? Like, so much stuff happened and I was like, it's only book 2. So is it gonna be a 5-book series? It's only book 2. What do you mean? I love Rebecca Yarros's battles. I'm so often disappointed by battle scenes. I love a good battle, and I so often feel like they're lacking detail, they're lacking colour and flavour. I want to be in it for a good amount of time. So often I feel like they're rushed and we just don't see the action, and that is not the, like, we are in there, we are getting the details, they are action packed and fast paced and exciting. Battle in the end was so good. I'm really loving Violet as our main character. I love the audiobook. The narrator has just like become Violet to me. She does such a great job. She really, like, I know it sounds stupid to say that she acts, because that's what audiobook narrators do, but she really like sounds like the emotions her character are going through. Like, you know how sometimes they have to kind of keep a somewhat regular tone and rhythm, and so they can only do so, like, she does what the character would say. Rebecca Soler and Teddy Hamilton, the last chapters, which are always from a different perspective. I'm still kind of reeling from the end. The ends, they're good stuff. They always leave you wanting more. I cannot wait for the 3rd book. I'm really invested in this series. I'm having a blast. I don't know what everyone was complaining about. Yeah, I'm looking forward to see where the series goes. I have a feeling like a kind of spanner was thrown in. A couple of spanners, to be honest, were thrown in towards the end of this one. There's one in particular that I'm thinking like might change like some of the mythology. I feel like there's more dragon lore that we've not tapped into, and I think inevitably we will have to tap into it. I'm so excited about it because I love the dragons. Yeah, those are all my thoughts about Iron Flame. I think I'd give it, what did I give Fourth Wing? Fourth Wing felt a very strong 8 out of 10. I think I'd give it Iron Flame 8 out of 10 as well. I think I like them for different reasons. Fourth Wing might be my favourite, but it's not by a ton. And those were the books that I read in February. I would love to hear about the books that you read in February. If you've read any of these and you have any thoughts or opinions, please let me know in the comments section. That is all I have for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing morning, afternoon, evening / night. My name's Jade. I hope I see you again next time. Goodbye!